Welcome to the Purpose-Based Retirement with certified financial planner practitioner Casey Weade.
It's not how much we make during the good times, it's how much we keep during those really bad times.
Casey leads a team of financial advisors with decades of experience helping families across the country retire with the confidence they deserve. The Purpose-Based Retirement assigns every dollar you've saved a specific purpose to meet a key retirement need.
Whatever risk you face, we've got a plan for that.
Stay tuned and learn how you can look forward to a worry-free, purpose-based retirement.
Hello again, I'm Lee Kelso. Thanks for joining us. I'm here with certified financial planners Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson from Howard Bailey Financial. On the program today, we're going to begin by taking a look at some advice that real-life financial planners had offered their clients that weren't necessarily on target. We're calling that advisors doing wrong. We have a caller question, curious about whether or not this investor can self-insure for long-term care. And then a little bit later in the program, we're going to be taking a look at how Roth can give you a $200,000 advantage. That's a Roth IRA advantage. So we have a lot to cover today, and I'm really interested in this first segment because these are advisors who are giving what you consider to be bad advice. How'd you come across this?
Well, this was actually done over the past several years. We've grown quite quickly over the last several years, and that means that I've had to hire a lot of advisors. And so I've interviewed a lot of different advisors over the years. I usually interview a couple a month, and during those interviews you typically get down to asking them, what types of products do you use, what's your book of business look like, and we take a look at the overall makeup of that book of business, and we want to take a look at what type of planning they're doing, their past education, their experience, what their long-term goals are, what their aspirations are, their education level, not just today, but where they want to be in the future. And throughout that experience, we try to weed out individuals that we feel are not the best fit for our practice. And what we've come across are some advisors that have done wrong, and we want to share that with everyone. Now, I don't want you to be afraid for applying for a job at Howard Bailey Financial. We are looking for more advisors at this time, so please go to howardbailey.com. You can click on our link and apply, and as long as you're doing right, we won't have to feature any of these things on the show.
Well, and I think that's why this is good feedback for our viewers, though, is because we've talked about this on the radio show before. All firms are not created equal, and all advisors don't have the same tools to work with. So it's good to know where your firm comes from and the types of beliefs that they really have.
Exactly. All right, so we're going to start with kind of a rogues gallery here for you. Yeah, and one of the first ones is the ability to sell real estate investment trusts multiple times. Now, explain that for me.
Well, I've seen this several times, typically with people that are coming into our office for a second opinion. They've got a large amount of their assets in real estate investment trusts. We saw this a lot over the last 10 years, and that was because people were very concerned about 2008, and they were looking for alternatives to investing in the stock market. And real estate investment trusts gained popularity as an alternative investment that didn't really perform like the stock market, and it also generated a fairly large commission. Typically, it would generate somewhere between a 6 and 10% commission for the advisor. And these things were flipping very quickly. So you'd buy into an illiquid investment like a real estate investment trust, and then sometimes they would be liquid again, going either public or being bought out within the next 6 to 12 months. And I interviewed an advisor who had the majority of his book was real estate investment trusts, and he wanted to know what type of REITs we like to use and which ones we could use. Well, as a fee-only advisor, we couldn't accept a commission on a real estate investment trust. We could still utilize them, however, we charge a fee. So we might charge 1% per year. Well, he was quite often saying he's going to walk back into his office and he had a stack of real estate investment trusts that he was going to use. And he was going to be able to continue to generate more commission, and sometimes 2 or 3 times a year, he would have the same bucket of money that would generate 7% and then 7% again before the end of the year. That's a 14% commission.
Wow.
That's not something that we're comfortable with.
Yeah, exactly. And the challenge was they were illiquid, and so that market's dried up a little bit, and so they're not turning over quite as much. So you just have to be cautious with those highly speculative
And they are speculative investments. They're high risk, and they just haven't been sold as such.
So another circumstance that you've mentioned before is proprietary funds. So you've got a limited toolkit to choose from.
Yeah, there was an advisor that we met with that came to us and said he was only using one type of fund company, and that fund company was the company that he worked for. However, he had other options. He had other different types of mutual funds that he could have sold, stuck to one particular mutual fund company because he wouldn't be compensated for some of those other products.
Yeah. Red flag for anybody out there that looks at their statement and sees that all the funds are from the same company. You have to question the motives behind the advisor there.
Kind of along those same lines is selling one particular fund because its commission structure is better for you, right?
Oh yeah, and that happens with most captive companies that are out there today. They still participate in something called revenue sharing, and those revenue sharing agreements mean that some of those companies on their tier sheets, they have to pay more in order to get on the tier sheet. And so if you end up with one fund company over another consistently, and I can tell you when somebody walks into our office from a particular company, I probably know which products that they actually have in their portfolio because I know that revenue sharing agreement for that particular company. I know which companies, whether it's an annuity company or a life insurance company or a mutual fund company, that those advisors are typically going to push more often because they have revenue sharing agreements and they get paid more from one company than the other.
And so the balance between life insurance and annuities also comes into play.
Well, that really comes into play largely due to the whole DOL ruling that started earlier this year, the fiduciary rule. And what I had heard initially, I had some advisors that I met that said, well, we're just going to take, because it only applies to IRA dollars, it doesn't apply to after-tax funds. And they'd say, well, what we're going to do is we're just going to use life insurance instead of annuities. That exempts us from a lot of the rules and controls that people have now that annuities are going to fall into the DOL's fiduciary rule, but life insurance isn't. And also taking, well, we're going to take all the non-qualified dollars and put them in annuities, and we're taking the IRAs and we're going to start moving them into life insurance. That exempts them from a lot of the regulation that's out there today, and that is a clear conflict of interest.
Well, what about using just annuities as opposed to other tools? Is that a red flag?
Oh, I have seen that this is changing a lot here these days because you can't even put somebody's dollars into an annuity out of a 401k. You can't take it from a 401k over to an annuity without owning a securities license because you're really giving securities regulations to someone, moving them out of a securities product into an insurance related product or a fixed product. You can't do that without a securities license. Now, it used to be that a lot of advisors would just say, well, I just don't want to deal with the securities regulators, so I'm just going to own an insurance license. Now we see more advisors today that will come in, we interview them, and they'll say, well, I've got about 5% or 10% of my portfolio or my book of business is in securities. Well, why is that? Well, they were apparently just holding that securities license so they could ultimately sell an annuity.
Right, and you can't put 100% of somebody's life savings into one tool, so there's got to be some bit of diversification there.
So the market is changing so quickly, and the products and what you can invest in changes so quickly. What role does education play?
Well, education to us is a huge deal. I think it's going to continue to be a bigger and bigger deal as we move on down the road. I think people are starting to recognize that it doesn't take a lot to be a financial advisor or to call yourself a financial advisor. A high school diploma and a week of studying and you get your securities license. Now you're advising people on their life savings. People want a certified financial planner. That is someone that's been board certified in investment, tax, estate planning, retirement planning, all comprehensive areas that you're going to need as you step into retirement. They've been thoroughly vetted. They've got a college education that we don't need in order to be an advisor. People, just like you walk in and you see with your doctor, you want to know that you walk into an advisor's office and they've got that same thing, DR, MD. You want them to have their CFP so you know that they actually have the right experience and knowledge to be advising you on your life savings in the first place. And many advisors today don't want to do that education or go that extra step because it's too much work.
Well, if this rogues gallery of events has raised some questions for you and you want to have maybe a new opinion on exactly what's happening in your portfolio, we hope you'll be one of the next 10 callers to take advantage of this opportunity. It's an opportunity to have a complimentary review of your entire financial retirement plan because we really do want you to make the best decisions for yourself and your family moving forward. So for the next 10 callers, you call the number on your screen right now. Casey and the team will sit down, meet with you, and give you your very own purpose-based retirement. We have questions from viewers coming next.
Let me help you create the retirement you dream of. Go to my website and pick one of 3 education options to get started today. Get a copy of one of my retirement planning books, sign up for a purpose-based retirement live event, or go to the Purpose-Based Retirement University. 2 days of college-level retirement planning instruction. With the right education and proper coaching, I believe anyone can create the retirement they dream of. It all begins with one step. Visit thepurposebasedretirement.com.
You need a plan to create the retirement you deserve. The first step is to tune in to the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with Casey Weade and Marshal Johnson. Saturdays at 11 a.m. and Sundays at 1 p.m. on WOWO 107.5 FM or Sunday mornings at 11 on 95.3 MNC.
During the week, Casey gets lots of questions from viewers. We select a few of those and invite those people to join us here on the program, and that's what we've done today. Deb from Fort Wayne is first up. Go ahead, Deb.
Our question is on long-term care insurance. We're getting mixed advice on that. Our attorney suggests that we be self-insured, and our long-term advisor says that we could go broke, and our neighbor says it's all a scam. What's your advice on that?
Well, I think you have to be careful, first of all, who you get your advice from. And I think it makes a lot of sense to sit down with someone that works in multiple different practice areas. You know, not someone that's just an estate planning attorney or someone that's just out to sell you an insurance policy. Your long-term care advisor doesn't get paid if you don't buy long-term care insurance. Sitting down with a fee-based certified financial planner, they can give you honest, open advice, giving you the ability to ultimately make the decision for yourself is the best thing that you can do. And there's a lot of different long-term care solutions that are out there today that weren't out there just 5 or 10 years ago, even just 2 or 3 years ago. The long-term care landscape has completely changed. And under current law, maybe your estate planning attorney is right. He says, well, you don't really need any long-term care insurance, you can self-insure. And that might be the case for you today under current law, but what about 10, 20 years from now, by the time you actually need the care, what if the law has changed and those things don't work anymore for you in order to give you that coverage that you really wanted? And I think it comes down to first starting with identifying what your goal is in getting that plan put together. Are you trying to ensure that you never have a dime out of pocket? Or are you putting together a plan that just makes sure that you're never destitute or you never become a liability to one of your loved ones? And that might mean that you don't need the Cadillac of long-term care plans. Maybe we can just move some of those assets around or pick up a small policy to provide a cushion and not make it a detriment to your current retirement. And there's a lot of solutions out there today that don't even require you to pay an ongoing premium for something you may or may not ever use, something that's always going to be left behind for the next generation. So the bottom line is, sit down with someone that can go through all the different solutions with you and make sure it's incorporated into an overall financial plan rather than just trying to sell one product as one solution to one problem, because retirement planning is more broad-based than that.
Yeah, and sit down with your husband there and have that discussion to say, this is what we're concerned about, this is what we want to try and protect against, as you mentioned. You know, with any risk that we face in life, we can manage that risk, we can accept that risk, or we can transfer the risk, and that's what those insurance policies, and Casey really hit the nail on the head there, that things are very different today. We've seen tools change dramatically, and I expect that's only going to continue because long-term care is a concern for a lot of families, and the companies out there are trying to deal with it in a multitude of ways.
Yeah, I'm happy to share with you the solutions that I've put together for myself and my family. I think that's what your advisor should be doing. I have some coverage, my parents don't, and so it's different for everybody, and everybody's an individual. I think we just need to look at it from a broad-based perspective.
Marshall, this question is going to come to you from Walter in Albion.
We've asked our advisor about our dividends. We plan on living on the dividends for our distribution. If the dividend market goes down, is that going to affect our dividends that we have that we're drawing our distributions on?
Walter, hey, great question. Yeah, absolutely. If the market goes down, we go back to the financial crisis that we saw back in 2008, and certainly there was a lot of dividends that were cut. Now, I think depending on the size of your portfolio, if you only need a 1 or 2% dividend, then I think that's pretty realistic to expect. But if you need a 3, 4, 5, 6% dividend, then that's something that we need to do some true income planning around. It sounds like to me you've got kind of a hope-so plan, as we call it, Casey, and not a dedicated income strategy. So that would be my advice to Walter.
Well, I think what we have to do, Walter, is we have to separate our paychecks from our playchecks. You know, if you look at all the different distributions that you have coming in, all your different expenses, you're going to have things that you just can't live without. That might be your home mortgage, that might be your home living expenses, that might be your food, your water, you know, all those utility bills, you know, the things that we absolutely have to have. Those are our paychecks. We have to have those for the rest of your life, regardless what happens in the stock market or the dividend market for that matter. Then you have your paychecks. This might be things that are going on vacations. These might be going out to eat. These are dollars that you don't absolutely have to have during your retirement years. Maybe that income becomes dividend income, satisfying those paychecks, and then creating some guaranteed income for those paychecks. Those are some of the planning things that we discuss when we're sitting down with individuals in our office.
All right, let's get to our last question. Helen from Fort Wayne. Go ahead, Helen.
I'm planning on retiring in the next 3 to 5 years. My coworkers say I have plenty of time to stay in the market, but I'm not so sure. When should someone get out?
Helen. No, no, I think
So.
we really need to put the plan together in all seriousness, and that means sitting back and going, well, can I afford the risk or not? Because many times I've sat down with individuals that are 3 to 5 years away from retirement or 10 or 15 years into retirement. They can afford the risk because they don't even have the immediate needs or very small immediate needs, unlike other individuals. Other individuals have large income needs that are going to take up 3 to 5% or more of their portfolio, and they can't afford to go through the same thing they went through during 2008 or 2001. They don't have time to make up those losses. And if you're in that position where you're actually going to need those dollars in the next 3 to 5 years, don't wait 3 to 5 years to put together the plan. Right. Put together the plan today. That means you can wake up every morning. Even if you're not retiring tomorrow, you can wake up every morning, go into work and decide, hey, you know, I don't have to worry about things anymore. I know if I just keep my head down, work for a couple more years, I've already got a plan in place and I'm going to be able to retire. Maybe we could also put a plan together that allows you to retire tomorrow earlier than you actually wanted to because we've had such a great market over the last few years.
Yeah, and that's such a big change from what we saw back in 2008 after the financial crisis. A lot of those individuals thought they only had 2 or 3 years to go as well. Mm-hmm. And if they weren't de-risking at that time, because she's in the red zone, she needs to take some of that risk off the table. 35%, I believe, is the statistic. 35% of people that retired in the last 12 months did so unexpectedly. It was health emergencies or they got laid off. So put that plan together 3 to 5 years out because you never know what's going to happen over the next 2 to 3.
Yeah, and I can tell you that there's a gentleman that I worked with that it was 5 years out from retirement. He just retired here in the last year. We started working together 5 years ago, and his wife said, she thanked us ups and down because she said it took so much pressure off of him because every single morning he wanted to check in on the markets. Every single night he would tell her what the portfolio did for the day. And she said, I just didn't want to hear it anymore. It was causing not only him extra stress, but it was causing her extra stress at the same time. And once we put together the plan, he didn't have to watch the market anymore because we gave him what I would like to call an anti-anxiety pill for his retirement.
Yeah.
So if that sounds pretty good, if you'd like to have that sleep dividend back, here's an opportunity for you. For the next 10 callers, we're offering a complimentary review of your entire financial and retirement plan. It's an opportunity for you to learn more about what's happening in your portfolio and what could the future hold for you. So if you're one of the next 10 callers, Marshall, Casey, and the team at Howard Bailey Financial make time on their calendar to meet with you and give you what you need, that anti-anxiety pill, that purpose-based retirement. All right, we'll be right back in just a second after our question of the day. And it is, the average 5-year CD is paying what in annual interest? Is it as little as 0.2% or as much as almost 3%? Casey has the correct answer when we come back.
At Howard Bailey Financial, every dollar has a purpose. We call it the purpose-based retirement. A certified financial planner will help you decide what you need your retirement money to do for you. We put together a written plan that puts your dollars exactly where you want them to be. And we put every dollar to work to maximize your retirement efficiency. For a higher level of insight and care, choose the purpose-based retirement from Howard Bailey Financial. Call us now to set a complimentary consultation.
You need a plan to create the retirement you deserve. The first step is to tune in to the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with Casey Weade and Marshal Johnson. Saturdays at 11 a.m. and Sundays at 1 p.m. on WOWO 107.5 FM or Sunday mornings at 11 on 95.3 MNC.
Hey, going into the break, we asked you our question of the day. It had to do with rates of interest offered on CDs. For a 5-year CD, what is the current annual interest rate? It's painfully low, but which is one is correct?
It is. It is painfully low. This is why we call these certificates of disappointment rather than certificates of deposit these days. That is B, 0.81% or 81 basis points, less than 1% per year. And I often ask people, hey, if you could get 10% guaranteed, would you even be watching the show right now? And many say, no, I'd be sitting on a beach right now enjoying my retirement. But those types of things just don't exist. And people are looking for other ways that they can increase their fixed rate of return on some of their safe money, because not everybody wants to keep everything into the market. I know my parents didn't, my grandparents didn't, and my parents before them probably didn't as well. Nobody wants to take risk with their entire life savings. I fall into that same boat, and so we're always looking for different ways that we can increase those rates of return on some of that liquid cash, some of the money that we don't want to tie up and we don't want to take risk with. And a lot of those times it comes down to our IRAs. We're trying to figure out what we can do with those IRAs in order to increase our rate of return. And everybody wants the same thing out of their IRAs. They want to have value, right? They want to make sure that they're getting growth. They want to make sure they're also preferably getting principal protection. They want income to last the rest of their lives, but they also want to leave assets behind to the next generation. They want to get some dollars out of that money, but they know they also have to pay their taxes. And the S&P 500 just won't give us every single one of those things. If we look at the S&P 500 from 2000 to 2016, there were some rough spots in there. And we saw from 2000 to 2003, the market lost 9%, 10%, 20%. Finally got back to even around 2007, and then during 2008 the market lost 37% of its value and finally got back to even a couple years later. And now we find ourselves from 2000 to 2016 in a market that's seen a lot of really big double-digit returns, but still only averaged 4.5% per year over the last 16 years. What we're going to illustrate to you in just a moment is exactly what we're always talking about on the show, is that it's not about how much you make during those really good years, but how much you protect during those bad years. If we take a look at CD rates and other safe money places, we looked at the stock market. Now look at what those traditional options are on the other side of the fence, which would be things like savings accounts, money market accounts, 1-year CDs or 5-year CDs, paying interest rates of 0.06% to 0.81%, as we asked during the question of the day during the open. And if we look at our IRAs, if we look at what we want those dollars to accomplish, we want them to accomplish several different things for ourselves and hopefully something for our heirs. We want them to be there for expenses, for emergency needs, and for medical costs as we continue to age. And then ultimately, we hope to leave those things behind to our heirs. If we look at what happens over your lifetime with your IRA, if you're just going into retirement, say you're 65 years old, you've got a $500,000 IRA, you're going to begin to have to be forced to take required distributions at the age of 70 and a half. And over your lifetime, if you live till age 90, you're going to end up paying taxes of $164,000 just on your required minimum distributions. Then if you reinvest those dollars into a taxable account, you're going to end up paying $67,000 on those reallocated RMDs. Then when you pass away, there's still value left in that IRA. You'll pay $106,000 in taxes at the value of that IRA upon your death. That means that over the rest of your life, you'll be paying upwards of $300,000 plus in taxes on a $500,000 IRA. And I hope, if nothing else, that illustrates you the importance of tax planning when we're doing our retirement planning. It's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. Instead, if you would have converted those dollars to a Roth IRA, which is one option. So if you converted those dollars to a Roth IRA, let's say we were able to do that in 1 year, this would technically take multiple years. If we were paying taxes of $125,000, which would have been, say, a multi-year conversion at the 25% bracket before we actually got to age 70, then now we would have had a Roth IRA that would have been left tax-free to the heirs. We only would have paid $125,000 in taxes instead of of $340,000 in taxes had we just held on to that IRA. This is again why we always talk about converting those dollars to tax-free accounts, and preferably before it's too late. Once we get 70 plus, it gets very difficult to accomplish a lot of these things. But if you're not in retirement yet, you're 5 or 10 years out, you're in the perfect spot to begin to do some serious tax planning and converting your traditional IRA dollars over to tax-free dollars that you can use during retirement. That'll ultimately not only reduce your tax burden from a federal, state, local income tax perspective, but also potentially on your Social Security. It may also lower your Medicare premiums as well. One of the things that we want to do is we want to try to combine these things. We want growth potential, but we also want protection. We want income, and we want to leave a legacy, and we want tax advantages. There's a vehicle out there that I use myself, my parents also use, which is a MEC or also an IUL, or an Index Universal Life Policy, that helps give us a floor. So as the market goes down, we can't lose, and if it goes up, we can participate in those gains, but we're going to give up some of the upside. And this is why a lot of brokers hate these vehicles. They'll say, well, if we were in the market, we could have made 30%, but here we're only going to make 10. Well, let's see what would have happened from 2000 to 2016 had we only received 12.5% of the upside of the market and none of the downside. Over that period of time, we would have averaged 6.4% per year and turned $100,000 into $287 instead of turning $100 into $211,000 with a 4.5% return had we just bought and held the market. It's not about how much we make, it's about how much we keep. And you might say, well, if I'm only making 12.5% in 2013, I would have given up about 2/3 of the gains in the market. But look at these returns over some good and bad periods of time. But during all these periods of time, we saw the market go through a major recession. From 97 to 06, with a 12.5% limit on our gains and a floor, meaning we couldn't lose, we would average 7.3%. 5.2, 7.6, 7.5%. And not only would we receive a decent rate of return on our account value, but we also would have had living benefits that could have benefited us while we're living for things like health care, assisted living, long-term care needs. And if we never used that account value or the living benefits, that account would have passed on to our heirs, death benefit tax-free. Ultimately, that death benefit is a legacy for the heirs, tax-free if we never use those dollars. For living benefits, for qualifying medical costs, it would also come out tax-free, or we could access those funds also tax-free for retirement spending. If we look at all these different avenues, that's what we're supposed to do as a financial planner, is look at all the different tools that are available for you to implement into your financial plan so you can ultimately maximize your retirement efficiency and spend more dollars because you're giving less to Uncle Sam. We use a combination of different vehicles in order to accomplish that goal. There isn't one perfect investment, but there's a lot of different vehicles out there with pros and cons, and we have to find the closest distance between 2 points, a straight line.
Well, you know, if you have not had that kind of input from the advisor you're working with, I think now's an opportunity that I hope you'll take advantage of, and that is to pick up the phone and be one of the next 10 callers who give us a ring right now. We're offering a complimentary financial and retirement review for everything you have going on right now to see if this approach might be a good fit. So for the next 10 callers, pick up the phone now and give us a ring, and we'll conduct that complimentary review with the thought that we're going to help you get through the purpose-based retirement that you need and not just keep doing things the way that you always have. Next 10 callers, the number on your screen is an opportunity I hope you'll take advantage of. And that's all the time we have. We've got to run. Casey and I will see you next week.